Hi, BookTube. Today I have a book that I'd like to talk about, but before that, I just want to say I don't even know if it's important to say, but I've been struggling with the fact that a player for my football team, the team that I support, that I watch twice a week, every month, until a couple of months of summer that there is no football, and back again. A player that I love and has brought me so much joy has died at 28 years old, Diogo Jota. Uh, I got the news a few days ago. I woke up to the news, just turned my phone on, and it was there. I couldn't even believe it. The shock was. I just thought it wasn't true. Just seeing 1996 to 2025 in a black and white picture, it was it was unfathomable. Um, I Yeah, I watched him score a goal in front of me to tie the game. Last few minutes, only a few months ago. I was hugging the stranger next to me in the stadium. We were so happy. Uh, he helped win us the title this season. And I remember the moment he had been injured. He came back and he was pointing to us saying, "I'm back, I'm back." And now he's gone. I, I I don't want to cut this or anything. I just want to say that it's horrible news. I don't think it's something I'll ever get over, and that whenever I watch the team again, that it's going to be there that he's not there anymore. Uh, I just can't believe that. I don't want to burden any of you who've come here for a book review with sorrow and death and stuff like that. But I felt like I can't. I can't talk about anything else without just mentioning this big cloud that I feel that's over my life. And what I've seen from the booktube community is that you can go on a little tangent like this, something personal, something emotional. Uh, Anyways, in the meantime, I turned to Rex Stout. Still reading, still watching things, and yeah, Private Eye July has come up. There's still some June related things that I want to talk about. Some previous 6 months, like I have that big tier ranking of all the books that I've read from January to June. I think I'll probably do that the next week. This whole thing, the news, has kind of sidetracked me for a few days, but I'll try and get back into things. And I did with Rex Stout, who Steve Donahue has been going on and on about for the past year at least, with his Nero Wolfe novels series. There are about 50 Nero Wolfe novels. Sorry about the light reflecting off the Kindle, because there's a light right behind me there. Yeah, so the Nero Wolfe novels. Nero Wolfe is a detective character that Rex Stout created. A private eye type, like Sherlock Holmes, for example. That special genius that sees things that the normal person just doesn't see. But there are certain interesting quirks and differences about this particular detective. And, there's, I think, about 50 novels. I read the 41st one in this sort of non-chronological series. I heard you could pick up anywhere, so I did, with the one that most intrigued me, which was about the FBI. It's called The Doorbell Rang, and it's not just about an atypical detective in Nero Wolfe, but it's not really a normal story with a detective. So, first of all, Nero Wolfe. I think the thing that stands out most about him is his size. He's not just fat, he's humongous, and it's not sort of just a little description, oh, he's a big guy. It's more that because of his size, he doesn't like to leave his home, his brownstone home in Manhattan. He stays there all the time, and he hires a detective or a private eye that you'd be familiar with. The type, the Philip Marlowe type, that if you've seen The Big Sleep, The Long Goodbye, or read those books, that you'd be really familiar with. Sorry, I just clicked this open. I'll put this to the side for a moment. That type of figure that goes out, the womanizer, the guy with the gun, he gets into the action scenes who does the interviews in the streets, get all that kind of grimy stuff, the film noir type figure. Nero Wolfe hires someone like that, and that's Archie Goodwin, and he narrates this novel to us, and I assume all of the novels to us, the same way that Sherlock Holmes, whilst being the main character in his stories, isn't the narrator, right? It's Dr. Watson who narrates the stories. I think the difference is that with Sherlock Holmes, he's active and he's out and about, and he is very much engaged in the case in a physical way. He's doing everything that a normal private eye does, but he's just weird in terms of his personality. So the difference here is that there are segments where it's just Archie Goodwin on his own, because he's the one that's going out, almost always exclusively. So there are scenes where Nero Wolfe is just back at home, and we're only referencing him or something like that. So it is different to Sherlock Holmes in that way, that even though the main detective isn't the narrator, there is a difference in how much they are in their novels. So you could argue that Archie Goodwin is the main character based on him being not just the narrator, but having the most pages and the most dialogue. But really, Nero Wolfe is the one that I remember. He's the most fleshed out in terms of quirks and personalities, and I'll get into them. So I mentioned the size, meaning that, he doesn't want to go anywhere. He sends out his guy to go and do everything for him. Archie Goodwin lives with him rent-free in this brownstone house. They're best friends in a way, but they don't sort of mention it that way. And Goodwin will basically do anything that Nero Wolfe says. They have that loyalty in their relationship, and they like to eat. A lot of pages in this short novel are dedicated to all sorts of fancy dining. It's a huge part of their day. I mean, obviously, dining and food are a big part of many people's days, but for them, the fancy, extravagant meals, the marinating the meat in this berry sauce for the next day was a huge part of their conversation. There's a chef, Fritz. I think he's their chef, their cook or something, but maybe I interpret that incorrectly, but he's there in the house with them as well. There is this kind of group of characters which I think was maybe the key thing in the novel that made me feel about 20 pages in, that these characters felt like friends of mine, that I already felt at home in the world of Nero Wolfe, in the world that Rex Stout created. He brings you in and makes you feel like a friend very quickly, which I thought was one of the best aspects of the novel. And I assume that that's going to be something that you get in all the others. But so there is that obsession with fancy dining. It's constantly referenced. They're planning their breakfast. They're talking about their lunch arrangements, their dinner. They're getting different food flown in. There are regulars at a very fancy restaurant nearby. It's a huge part of their conversation. And there are other different weird little quirks that Wolfe has, like saying bah all the time. Like SMH, as we'd use in text language these days. He just sort of scoffs at you, bah. Or his little thinking mode where he closes his eyes and he starts doing this little action with his lips. And Archie Goodwin looks at him and knows, he's in his thinking mode. So in this novel, there's a moment where Nero Wolfe is in his thinking mode and Goodwin comes up to him, and his first thought is, what on earth could he be in that mode about? Because we don't have anything to go off yet. We have no leads. We don't really have evidence. So what is he in deep thought about? But that's another one of his many quirks, which I think really bring him to life, not as like just a private eye, just a detective, but someone really memorable. And so this novel starts off with them, getting a new client, Mrs. Bronner, who comes in, and she's a rich woman who sent out about 10,000 copies of this new tell-all book about the FBI, all their different sort of dirty secrets and a negative side of the FBI. And because of that, she thinks that now she's being targeted by the FBI. She thinks she's being followed, that, her phone's been tapped, etc., things like that. And so she comes to Nero Wolfe asking if he can handle the situation. So it's not necessarily, my husband's been murdered, or I think my husband's being unfaithful, or something like that. It's more she has an issue in her life and she wants Nero Wolfe to solve it. And so it becomes for Nero Wolfe, do I take on the untouchable FBI? And initially, everyone around him is telling him how stupid it is, how impossible it is. And part of his reason for doing it is that sort of view that it's impossible. He thinks, nothing's impossible for me. But, the major thing that pulls him into this case is the money. She offers them $100,000 up front. Not just offers, I think she just gives them $100,000 up front. And then she says she'll pay for their expenses. And I think, if I remember, she'll give them even more money if she's satisfied at the end of the case that she has her desired result. I think the $100,000 just comes up front, as long as you take the case, whatever happens, that's your $100,000. If I'm remembering correctly. I have an annoying habit of forgetting these little details or mixing them up in my head, but that's the thing. And he thinks $100,000 plus whatever extra, I don't need to take another case for a whole year. So you see, he's not so desperate as Sherlock Holmes, for example, to take these cases. He wants the money so he can spend his time on the fancy dining and spending time in his little orchid room. He has a big flower room in his brownstone that he spends a few hours in every day. And he likes to read. We see him reading a couple of books that are named here. So those are certain things that build his personality really well. And I think that helps to build this, almost quote-unquote lore surrounding the character that I'm sure we'll see more of as I read more of the books. I feel like I've spent a lot of time, going around the plot. I think just getting into it. So Nero Wolfe wants to take on the FBI. There is a murder in this novel, and that sort of comes on as a side plot almost. Someone was murdered, and 3 FBI men were seen walking out of his house about an hour after the crime or something like that, just before the police came in. And that's a key piece of information that Nero Wolfe and Archie Goodwin want to investigate to then use and hold against the FBI. So really they want to build a little case or narrative that they can then throw back at the FBI to tell them to back off Mrs. Brunner. But of course, because it's Nero Wolfe, he's going to want to do even more than that. Sort of establish his territory and show the FBI that not only you're not messing with her, but you're not messing with us, and there's no retaliation. Because the moment they take the case, they start fearing that their house has been bugged, that all their phones are tapped, that they're being followed and tracked. And they are. I mean, they're certainly being tracked everywhere. Archie Goodwin has to lose his tails constantly. Whenever he goes out, he gets a cab. He just tells the cab to, just fly off as fast as you can, take some major quick turns so he can lose the tail. Then he gives him the real address of the location that he wants to go to. That happens a few times in the novel. Whenever they speak in their home, the brownstone, they want to, turn the TV up to max volume or turn the radio on and come in close and whisper. And you get all these fun details which really evoke the atmosphere that they're in. And that culminates in a great scene involving a fake orchid delivery that I really don't want to spoil, but it looks like they're getting orchids delivered in a truck. They're getting something else for their final master plan, which was a lot of fun. I think this was a fun distraction, but I don't want to say that and limit the novel, because I thought it was a great reading experience, and I definitely want to continue with these because they were so much fun. I mean, I know this is considered one of the better ones, but it doesn't seem like a series with major peaks and valleys. It seems like a consistently really good series. I thought this was great. And I think as the novel goes on, the characters, Nero Wolfe, Archie Goodwin, etc., they become more motivated to take down the FBI because they feel that they've taken offense to them being tracked, their phones being tapped, everything like that. Their lifestyle and the lifestyle of their friends and associates has had to change for the period in which they've taken this case. So they're really going all out. And you will get that incredible explanation at the end that you'll see at the end of a Sherlock Holmes story where he'll just tell you how he's found out, how he's done it, how he's cracked the case, who's done it, where they did it, and all that little grandstanding showboating. You'll get that wonderfully in this novel. And it all culminates in a wonderful final page where the doorbell rings for the final time that just put a real smile on my face, a much needed smile. A wonderful moment. I just highlighted the whole page on my Kindle so I can just remember it, for future whenever I look back at a book and I go through my own highlights and notes. That final page was really wonderful. So, just to sum up, I'm glad I finally listened to Steve Donahue and his constant discussion on Nero Wolfe recently. He said that he's revisited these Nero Wolfe stories that first he had maybe sort of dismissed as a bit of fun but nothing major, and now he's come to really love them. And I can see why. So that's my first reading for Private Eye July, and I hope to continue on. I don't know if it's just going to be Nero Wolfe or if there's going to be any more Nero Wolfe. Certainly in my life, I hope to read more Nero Wolfe. But I'm not entirely sure what private eye fiction I might be going on to. I think my next read might be for Rocket Summer for science fiction. I have read Frankenstein. That's kind of, I sort of finished it as the hour turned into July. So I could count it as my July Rocket Summer reading. I'm going to make a video for it anyways, so it doesn't matter so much what the classification is. And I will definitely include it in my first 6 months of the year ranking, because I want to, I make the rules. So, well, I mean for my ranking, not for Rocket Summer. That's Michael K. Vaughan's event. But yeah, anyways, we'll see what I read next. I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.